Hello and welcome to the new Grant Officer Introduction to the Perkins V, provided by Career and Technical Education Technical Assistance Center of New York State. Perkins V is the informal name for the Strengthening Career and Technical Education for the 21st Century Act, which took effect in 2019 and replaced the Carl D. Perkins Career and Technical Education Act of 2006, commonly referred to as Perkins IV. Perkins V provides $1.2 billion in federal funding annually for career and technical education at secondary and post-secondary levels. We will address the post-secondary process for Perkins V funding today. The explicit goal of the Perkins V Post-Secondary Grant is to develop more fully the academic, career, and technical skills of post-secondary students who elect to enroll in career and technical education programs by challenging institutions to improve programs designed to prepare individuals to work in a technologically advanced society and by offering funding to achieve this goal. In other words, these funds are meant to help improve your organization's CTE program quality and bolster your college's efforts to better prepare CTE program participants for careers. At a high level, this is what the Post-Secondary Perkins V Grant does, and generally how it works. Perkins provides funding for institutions that serve economically disadvantaged CTE students. Perkins consists of federal funds passed down to the states. New York State then allocates post-secondary funds to public community colleges. Perkins funds must supplement. They must not supplant institutional responsibilities. Perkins funds must not be used to duplicate activities or expenditures funded by other sources. Perkins serves 50 institutions and/or consortiums in New York for the 2023 grant year. This grant is non-competitive. It is formula funded. I mentioned that the Post-Secondary Perkins V Grant serves 50 institutions, and here is a full list. The Post-Secondary Perkins V is not competitive. Formula funding determines the grant allocation each institution will receive. The key factors in determining each institution's funding are the total state allocation for that year, the number of economically disadvantaged CTE students reported by the institution, whether any other institutions become eligible or lose eligibility for a given year. In other words, your college has money set aside for its Perkins CTE program efforts, but those funds cannot be transferred to the college until your application is approved by the State Education Department. This webinar is intended to help new grant officers on a pathway to successful completion of their college's application and the steps leading to that application. A key step in the Perkins process is what's called the Comprehensive Local Needs Assessment. Every second year, an institution must complete a Comprehensive Local Needs Assessment, or CLNA, to identify needs and gaps to improve quality and to address the needs of students. Your post-secondary institution must bring together various stakeholders with your academic and workforce communities, including local industry representatives. These stakeholders will form your local advisory council and provide key insights into local needs and opportunities. The CLNA process requires your post-secondary institutions to collect data and information about your career and technical education programs and local workforce needs. Key data sources will include institutional data and the New York State Department of Labor long-term projections by industry. The local advisory council and other data collection help to identify your organization's needs and gaps to improve program quality and performance and to meet your students' needs. Understanding your organization's needs and gaps related to CTE will drive how you develop program goals, activities, and services to address those needs and gaps. Those goals will be the focus of your Perkins grant allocation for the 2 years following the CLNA process. Goals serve as the organizational framework for activities and expenditures and must focus on improving quality and performance based on the needs identified by the CLNA. The CLNA is sort of a roadmap of your organization's needs and gaps for the focus of Perkins grant funds. It starts with the New York State Department of Labor long-term projections by industry. Those projections are essentially where we need to go as a state seeking to meet labor needs. You then use your stakeholders to consider other data to identify where changes are needed in your programs to improve results for participants. These understandings then lead to your program goals. Goal 1 must address how the institution will devote at least 5% of its total allocation to serving CTE, career and technical education students with disabilities. We are not looking at students with disabilities generally, Rather, we are looking at their performance within Perkins CTE programs at your institution. Then your college will be asked to propose up to 4 additional goals for a maximum of 5. Goals must improve program quality and student performance and increase access and opportunities for special populations. Goals must be comprehensive and cohesive. All activities must work together toward measurable objectives. Each goal may have numerous objectives that are ambitious, realistic, and attainable. Goal activities may supplement, but they may not supplant or duplicate services. All goal expenditures must match the FS10, and activities and expenditures must end by June 30th, the last day of any applicable grant year. All activities and expenditures planned for the 2023 grant year must be evaluated within that grant year. In other words, you will have information or data showing that you did what you said you would do. You should plan activities such that you can complete those activities and measure them before the end of the grant year, as required at the state and federal levels. The goal title should concisely indicate the primary objective and/or activity of the goal. For example, improving tutoring services for the veterinary technician program. Applicants must complete a goal format for each goal and a goal objective chart within the goal format. Goals need measurable objectives. Measurable objectives will describe the specific program level improvements to be achieved. For example, improving the nursing program's retention rate from 85% to 90%. Goals also need current data points. Applicants should provide data from the most recent year to show current performance. For example, in the 2022 grant year, the nursing program retained 85 out of 100 students for a rate of 85%. Finally, goals require aspirational data points. Provide the goal for improvement. For example, for the 2023 grant year, the nursing program aims to retain 90 students out of 100 for a new retention rate of 90%. The application must address each of the 3 post-secondary Perkins Grant core indicators of performance. Key point: not every goal or objective needs to address all the indicators, but each of the 3 indicators must be addressed within 1 or more goals somewhere in your application. For example, 3P1 need not be addressed in each of an institution's 5 goals, but at least one of those goals must address 3P1. The data for these indicators feed directly into gaps. Those feed into the goals. Goals feed into what funding can be requested. Indicators of performance lead to identifying gaps, lead to setting goals, lead to allocating funds to those goals. The first indicator is 1P1, post-secondary retention and placement. The percentage of CTE concentrators who, during the second quarter after program completion, remain enrolled in post-secondary education are in advanced training, military service, or a service program that receives assistance under the National Community Service Act of 1990, are volunteers as described in Section 5A of the Peace Corps Act, or are placed or retained in employment. This indicator requires you to report the percentage of these concentrators who are still enrolled in your institution or otherwise enrolled in post-secondary education, in advanced training, military service, or a service program as defined by the National Community Service Act of 1990. In other words, which students are continuing their education, receiving job training, serving in the military, or working in a recognized service program like AmeriCorps in the second quarter since their most recent program completion in your organization. But the second indicator is 2P1, Earned Recognized Post-Secondary Credential. The percentage of CTE concentrators who receive a recognized post-secondary credential during participation in or within 1 year of program completion. A recognized post-secondary credential is defined in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act as a credential consisting of an industry-recognized certificate or certification, a certificate of completion of an apprenticeship, a license recognized by the state or federal government, or an associate or baccalaureate degree. A student gets counted under this indicator whether the student obtains the credential during participation or within 1 year of completion, meaning that student would be counted if the student obtains the credential in the 1 year following the student's completion of the program. The third core indicator is 3P1, non-traditional program enrollment. The percentage of CTE concentrators in career and technical education programs and programs of study that lead to non-traditional fields. Non-traditional fields in Perkins V means occupations or fields of work for which individuals from one gender comprise less than 25% of the individuals employed in each such occupation or field of work. Acceptable uses of grant funds. Perkins V is very specific about expenses that are eligible for funding. Expenses provide career exploration and career development activities through an organized, systematic framework designed to aid students before enrolling and while participating in a CTE program in making informed plans and decisions about future education and career opportunities and programs of study. Provide professional development for faculty, administrators, specialized instructional support personnel, career guidance, and academic counselors or paraprofessionals. Provide within CTE skills necessary to pursue high-skill, high-wage, or in-demand industry sectors or occupations. Support integration of academic skills into CTE programs and programs of study to support CTE participants at the post-secondary level in achieving academic skills. Plan and carry out elements that support the implementation of CTE programs and programs of study that result in increasing student achievement on performance indicators. Develop and implement evaluations of the activities carried out with those funds under this part, including evaluations necessary to complete the Comprehensive Local Needs Assessment and the local report. Applicants are not required to address all 6 uses of funds. However, funds can only be expended for the uses outlined above. Please see the link to the Postsecondary Perkins V Guidelines for further information. Prohibited uses of grant funds. Perkins V is specific about what expenses cannot receive these grant funds. Please check to ensure that your application does not include any of the following expenses. Your funding may be delayed or your application returned for revisions if you include any of the following. Expenditures are not allowed for students not enrolled in CTE programs. The one exception is recruitment. Expenditures that directly benefit individual students may not be included. The exception here are expenditures that reduce or eliminate out-of-pocket expenses for special populations of students participating in the CTE programs. You may not use Perkins funds for payment of tuition for high school students. You may not use Perkins funds for payment of tuition, internships, or apprenticeships for students. You may not use Perkins funds for equipment that is for administrative, faculty, or staff use, such as computers. General use furniture is also not allowed. Food service, refreshments, banquets, or meals are not eligible for Perkins funding either. Promotional items, pens, pencils, t-shirts, they may not be included either. Remodeling is not allowed. Travel outside the United States is not allowed. Professional organization memberships may not be included. And finally, subscriptions to journals or magazines are not allowed under Perkins V. Essential program operational dates. There are several key dates associated with post-secondary Perkins V funding. June 10, 2022, the Perkins application is due to the New York State Education Department. September 30th, 2022, CTEA1, CTEA2, Certified 2021-2022 data are due. December 30th, 2022, Equipment Installation Deadline. January 10th, 2023, Equipment Verification Form is due. February 10th, 2023, your interim report is due. February 17th, 2023, CTEA1 and CTEA2 Certified 2021-2022 placement data are due. March 31st, 2023 is the last date to submit budget amendments. June 30th, 2023 is the last date to encumber funds. September 15th, 2023, your final report and expenditure report, the FS10F long form, are due. September 29th, 2023, CTEA1 and CTEA2 Certified 2022 to 2023 data are due. Please note that the certified CTEA1 and CTEA2 data must be submitted on time to be considered for further funding. The New York State Education Department cannot delay the funding process to accommodate data submission beyond these dates. Planning for next year's application. January. Begin planning for next year's Perkins V Postsecondary Grant application. In non-CLNA years, gaps, needs, and program goals are already known for the application. In the fall and spring, plan to draw together your local advisory committee. Perkins Grant Officer Responsibilities. Perkins Grant officers have several specific responsibilities. We have divided them into categories here. Note that all of these tasks and responsibilities must be performed by someone at each post-secondary institution. Depending on the organization's internal structure, there may be one or more people responsible for the work who must coordinate their efforts. Under the heading of grant management, this individual or persons must serve as the primary point of contact between New York State Education Department Perkins staff and the institution. This person or persons must report to NYSED on budgetary changes or delays in goal progress, adjust timelines to maximize the effectiveness and efficiency of goals, and the use of Perkins funds. This individual must coordinate the planning, meeting, and documentation of the Perkins Local Advisory Council activities. And this person must coordinate submission of nominations of CTE students for consideration of the Vanguard Award. In other words, while there may be several people at an institution working on Perkins, there should be just one grant officer who is ultimately responsible for communicating with the State Education Department and for meeting the obligations of the application. Programmatic responsibilities of the grant officer include collaborating with key stakeholders to ensure institution-wide awareness, commitment, and support for the goals of the Perkins Grant. Monitor all goals for adherence to the Perkins guidelines and to ensure all goals and activities run efficiently and effectively. Utilize resources provided by the New York State Education Department to make improvements resulting in increased participation of students in CTE careers. Ensure all equipment, supplies, and materials are ordered and equipment is installed, operational by December 31st. Finally, the grant officer is responsible for reporting and fiscal activities that include ensuring timely submission of all required programmatic and fiscal reports to the New York State Education Department, tracking Perkins Grant spending on a regular basis and submitting budget amendments, working with research staff to improve data collection and ensure timely report submission. We've included links to key documents here, including the forms you must complete and official guidance. Please, if you have multiple people in your institution working on this, ensure that the documents you submit are all in this year's current formatting. Institutions that submit applications that include material from previous years will have their applications returned for revisions. If you have questions, the New York State Education Department's Office of Postsecondary Access, Support, and Success can help.